Hello, everyone. This is Beastly Eel, and on today's episode, we're going to be talking about Loki, the season finale. Now, if you have not seen this, please stop this video, watch it, and then come back and see me, because there was so much that happened. I mean, a ridiculous amount of stuff happened, and I don't want to ruin it for anybody else. So definitely, there are super spoilers ahead. And I recommend you, if you don't want to be spoiled, I recommend stopping and watching it. Anyway, for those of you who have actually watched it, Loki starts off exactly where it began, ended the last episode. So, it is, so we hear all these voices, and we hear Avengers talking. We hear classic speeches heard throughout everything, right? And we know this because we just hear it in the background. And then this is the opening credits, I guess you'd say. And we get to the point where Loki and Sylvie walk to the end of time. It is literally just, you see the time stream in one infinite circle. It never ends. And you see this castle in the middle of it all. It's more like a rock formation, and then on it is a castle. So they are debating on whether to go in, because they're not quite sure what to do. I mean, this is completely different than what they're used to. They finally made it to where they wanted to go, and now they're like, what do we do? So what they do is they do a little back and forth, and they finally decide that they're going to go inside. But before they do, the doors open. And when the doors open, they go directly forward. And when they get to the big open area, and FYI, the building, castle, whatever you want to call it, looks like crap. And hear me out, it is probably was beautiful at one point, but it looks like it is so ancient and so destroyed that it's just eh. But it clearly shows that somebody powerful or with influence is there. So they continue to walk, and then there's Miss Minutes, who pops up and basically explains to them that you're here where the one beyond all, or the one that remains, and says that, you two have made it so far, and now you have a chance to be put back into the timeline, both of you, and it being able to work. And neither one of them believes her or agrees, and they basically deny her. So she leaves, and they continue to go forward. So they continue to go forward, and they get to an elevator. Well, we don't know it's an elevator yet. Spoiler, it's an elevator. So they get to this big open area, and this elevator opens, and it's just a man in it. Just a man. And he basically explains that, I go by many names, I am who I am, and I'd like to discuss things with you. Let's have a talk. Let's go in the elevator and have a talk. Now, while this is happening, they attempt a couple of times to attack him, and it fails. He basically phases through it. Now, when I say phase through it, I mean he phases through time. He basically goes through time and space to avoid all the attacks. So they get into the elevator and go up, and then she continues to try to kill him because he's human. Well, I shouldn't say human. He is definitely flesh and blood. So she tries to kill him. Well, it continues to fail, and he disappears out of the elevator. So while this is going on, back at the TVA, we see none other than the judge, who is waiting to get all the files that she wants from Miss Minutes. Well, Miss Minutes doesn't give her the files she wants, and she basically says that the one who remains, or I think she says it this way, is the one in charge, thinks this will be helpful for you. So she gets these files, and we don't see them. We don't see them, but she goes through them. And at some point, I wish I remembered the exact order of everything, Morbius eventually comes in. And he comes in, and she's talking with him, and she's distraught. The judge is kind of distraught. But they continue to talk. Well, turns out that Hunter B12, I believe that's her name, or B13. Anyway, she found she found the original judge. So no more of the variants. She found the real judge, and she had everyone go after her there, where they met her real self, not the variant her. And she explains that this is the problem. We are all variants, and we need to talk. So Morbius basically explains that to her by showing her a pen from the school that she's the principal of, or was the principal of, is the principal of. One of her selves is a principal at the school, and she realizes how difficult that is. So Morbius turns on the pruner. He goes to stab her. She beats him, and he waits to be stabbed again, and she doesn't. She opens up a portal and disappears. So she disappears. Back to the main point, which is Sylvie and Loki go upstairs with this guy. He is eccentric, bizarre, entertaining, don't get me wrong, but no idea his intentions. I mean, he is literally an enigma. Can't read him to save your life. They sit down and have a conversation with him, and he explains everything. He explains that the multiverse is a problem. He created the TVA, so his alternate versions of himself don't try to take over the entire multiverse, because what would happen is what would happen is that eventually there'd be so many branches, and there'd be different versions of him, and not all of them as good as him, and would try to destroy other universes. So in his mind, he's doing the correct thing by pruning those variants and helping with keeping him in charge, so he can make sure that none of his other variants become in control. Kind of hypocritical. And basically what happens is, now that the TVA is falling apart, because the TVA is no longer fighting, because they know the truth now. There's a Nexus event going on everywhere, and he was not aware of it. He basically stated that he only knew up until that moment, and he gave them a choice. You can either take over for me and my work continues, or kill me and you're going to deal with another version of me that's a lot worse. So Sylvie decides what she wants to do. Loki decides what he wants to do. And the two of them fight because Sylvie wants to kill him and he doesn't think it's a good idea. So he's trying to convince her. She thinks he's betraying her. He's trying to explain to her that that's not what I'm doing. I'm literally trying to tell you that he might be not lying because he's crazy. I mean, he's crazy, but he might be telling the truth, that there's something worse than him. So she thinks that he's ruining lives and it's not right and everyone deserves free will. Blah, 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 blah. So they go into a fight scene, and I have to say, the two Lokis fighting was not what I was expecting in this episode. The two of them fought, and then they make out. Yeah, it's a weird situation. It's not a lie either. They sword fight. Loki basically phases in front of her, drops his sword, and says, I don't want to hurt you. And I don't think that this is the right thing to do. They kiss. She teleports him somewhere, and then he gets sent to the TVA, we see. Not quite sure exactly where, but we assume it's got to be the TVA because of the location of it. So, because of that, we know that he got sent somewhere else. So back to Sylvie, she's with the bad guy, and she stabs him. And when she stabs him, he says, "I'll see you around." And what happens is the entire timeline starts to branch off in a million different directions and looks more like a galaxy than it did just one straight line. And Sylvie just breaks down crying. So back to Loki. Loki's trying to look around to see what's happening. So he's running through the TVA. Apparently, there's a huge issue going on, and there's soldiers trying to get everywhere. And he meets up with um, Hunter B13 or B12 and Morbius. And he's like, "What's going on? We can't stop this from happening. It's too late." And they're like, "Who the heck are you?" And he's like, "What? Yeah, who the heck are you? Like, who are you?" And he looks over and he sees Kang's the Conqueror's statue. And we now know that he was Kang the Conqueror, granted a variant of him, and now Kang has returned, and he's going to eliminate a lot of people. So the multiverse is going to be a big factor. So, what we need to realize now is, oh, by the way, that was the end of the episode. And then we find out that there's definitely going to be a season 2 with Loki, but that's how it ends. So, I think, here's some thoughts. The judge finds the Kang the Conqueror that is most likely to be very similar to the one that ran the TVA that we're aware of. So he's going to probably be the one that tries to conquer everything to bring it back to the way it was. The Morbius we know, I think, is going to stay behind and try to run the TVA his way. But what we found out was that there's an infinite amount now, and that's going to be a problem. And Kang the Conqueror is now going to be the biggest threat the MCU has ever faced, and apparently there's more than just one. So there's going to be a lot of stuff happening, and it is just, who knows what's going to happen in season 2. So for right now, that's it for me. If you like the content you see, please like and subscribe below, and just make sure you watch Loki, because it was so good. So good. I recommend it. This is Beastly Eels signing out. Have a good night.